Welcome, everyone, to Natural AF. I'm your host, Isaac,
And I'm Alexa.
and we are so excited to introduce this new show to you to kick it off with my beautiful partner and co-host. And in this episode, we're going to get to know a little bit about Alexa and where that strange accent comes from.
Yep, as you can hear, we are not from the same part of the world. So I'm going to tell a little bit of my story. We're going to talk about how Isaac and I met. We're also going to talk about what it means to us to be natural AF and everything we have in store for this podcast. And we're so excited to tell you guys more about it.
And for those of you who remember this being the Natural AF podcast where it was just me, those episodes are still up. They're on Spotify under the show name Natural AF Podcast. And we reference one of those episodes, the first one called episode 0 in this episode. And you can still find it there. The other episodes, all the episodes going forward will be under the show name Natural AF. So I hope that's clear as mud. And if you want to support the show, we would greatly appreciate it. And you can do that monetarily through Natural Artform, which is a business that we run together. And we make the world's best, fastest acting, natural, organic pain relief cream.
It also smells great.
And yes. And the other way you can help us out is by going and sharing this show with your family, friends, anyone that you think would be interested. We've got so many amazing guests coming up, a lot of great conversations. And without further ado, I think we'll just get right into it.
Let's do it.
Alexa is a woman of many talents. She has studied in holistic nutrition, neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. She is a PSYCH-K Facilitator, a student of human design, and she's also now co-owner of Natural Artform, where her talents are greatly improving the systems and operation of the business. She's helping us fulfill our mission of providing uncommonly potent and pure alternatives for common products such as deodorant, sunburn relief, and our flagship product, ALLEVIATE, which is our fast-acting topical pain relief. Her pure heart and fun sense of humor, unique gifts in pattern recognition, and cutting through the bullshit make her a positive force of nature and an uplifting presence on the Natural AF podcast. So welcome, Alexa.
Thank you. What an introduction. Thank you. I love that.
I hope the reading of that felt natural. I don't usually read notes on this, but I wanted to get it right because...
Oh, you should totally do voiceovers, like of intros or like, movie voiceovers. You could totally pull that off. I love it. That was great.
Yeah. Well, for those of you with halfway decent hearing, you can tell that she's not from where I'm from. So how about you tell us a little bit about your journey, your background, where you grew up, and what led you to where you are or where we are today?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let's rewind back to the beginning, I guess. So I was born and raised in Sydney. I was there for most of my life up until the last 3 years. I did move around a lot, so I lived in a few different places across Sydney. And I guess... I've got a pretty rich cultural background. So my mum's Middle Eastern background and my dad's Serbian background, so Eastern European. Yeah, it's a very, very unusual mix. I had a really, like I said, a rich cultural upbringing, I would say. My family, my mum. It's where we get up, it's where I get my sass from.
I call her a Middle Eastern Latina.
Yeah, so I guess early on I was pretty aware of the problem with the medical industry and pharmaceutical products. So I was vaccine injured as a child. Nothing super severe, but I did have reactions to vaccines, which definitely impacted my health. And then my mum stopped vaccinating me around the age of 4. Which is when she decided they wanted to have another baby. And
hold on, just pause 1 second. Just to clarify, sorry to interrupt. Vaccine injured, does that mean you're autistic or is that, because I've been listening to Owen Benjamin a lot, and that's always the joke. Vaccine damage equals autism, but
yeah. Well, no, I'm definitely not on the spectrum, but we do kind of joke. Like I have little like OCD things, and like where we're like, is she just on the spectrum? No, I wouldn't say I've never displayed any of those tendencies, like that were really obvious.
Yeah.
So no, not like that, but I just had pretty severe reactions. So the most prominent that I can share is that, so after, I don't know which vaccine it was, but after one of my shots, I had really like encephalitis is one of the reactions, and that's swelling on the brain. So, shortly after that shot, my mum couldn't breastfeed me anymore because every time she laid me down, I would scream this high-pitched scream, and the high-pitched scream is an indicator of this particular reaction.
Yeah.
So she went to the doctors, of course, and just full disclosure, I'm the eldest child, so I'm kind of like, I was like the dummy, the test dummy.
The guinea pig.
Yeah, so, and I don't hold anything against my parents at all. They did the best that they could with the knowledge that they had at the time. So my mom went to the doctor and she said, like, I can't, like, she won't feed. I can't feed her. And they were like, oh, she's just, she just wants to come off the breast. She doesn't want it anymore. And I was only a few months old. And my mom was devastated, and, I was put on formula. And then, years later when she started doing the research, she found that that's a very common side effect of that particular vaccine. It might have been the MMR, but don't quote me on that because I'm not actually sure. So, then, my parents decided that they wanted to have another baby. So they started my mum did the research, and my brother has never had a vaccine in his life. He is so healthy. Like, our health growing up was like night and day. I was the one that suffered, from all the recurring ear infections, and like even as a teenager when I would get sick, like just a cold or flu, I'd always end up with like a chest infection or a sinus infection or a throat infection. Like my health was just, my brother, still to this day, my brother gets sick and it's like a day or two, a few days, and he's fine. So from pretty early on, we were very much into natural health, using natural remedies. We've used homeopathy for most of my life, pretty much all of my brother's life. We dabbled in, like naturopathy and some other modalities, but homeopathy for us, we still use it to this day and absolutely love it. So I was very aware of that from a young age, but as I know now, there's layers to everything. I kind of grew up like that, pretty health conscious. And then, moving into adolescence, I started to deal with sort of mental health issues. I guess it sort of started at the end of primary school. So here that's around the age of like 12. And then, we normally start high school at around 12, 13. So in those last years of primary school, I was bullied. And not like teased and bullied, but it was like within my friend group. So like my group of girlfriends, it was very like bitchy and catty, and I would often get left out. And I think the depression and stuff sort of started from there. And then obviously moving from that into high school, which is like a whole, you're in a whole different world. And so I struggled with that for like a lot of my adolescence. So depression and anxiety, but back then I didn't even know what anxiety was. Quite early on, actually, I also got a bit of social anxiety if I was around lots of people, I would get super, super anxious. And I had no idea what that was back then. I was only maybe 13 or 14 at the time. And so I still ended up in the medical system because then, they just give you a mental health, you go to your GP and they give you a mental health plan. GPs here are general practitioners, so just like your everyday doctor, and they put you on a mental health plan, and you go and see a psychologist, and it's still all in that industry. And it helped to some degree, but it still took me years and years to really understand exactly what's at play when it comes to mental health. And I know we're definitely going to be exploring some of those concepts, let's call them, throughout the podcast, because my understanding of it now is that it's very much a spiritual issue. I would say like you're being spiritually attacked. So I had no awareness of this, went through that system, and then then transitioning into adulthood, in my early adulthood, I turned to alcohol and drugs because I never really dealt with those issues, never dealt with the mental health. You know, and I think it started at first, like when I was 18, you know, here 18 is the legal age. It was like fun at first. You know, I would go out with my cousins and, you know, my friends, and, you know, we'd drink and have a good time. But then over the years, as I got into my early 20s and probably up until the age of like 24, 25, it just got to a point where it wasn't fun anymore. You know, and I was like often drinking alone. I worked as a bartender for almost a decade during that time, and that didn't help because I was literally surrounded by alcoholics and gamblers, and like pubs are not nice places to be, not nice places to
Can
work.
I interject a question just there? Because just knowing you and how you are, like you're very, very smart, very intelligent. And I've heard other people that are very intelligent that had a lot of alcohol in their past. They would drink to basically bring them down to other people's levels so that they would just feel less anxious and just kind of smooth out the interactions. Was that kind of going on there too?
Yeah, 100%. I look back now and I think I mean, society intentionally tries to dumb you down. You know, quote unquote they. So that was definitely at play. But I look back now and I definitely tried to lower myself to the norm, like to basically to mediocrity. You know what I mean? Like just to fit in. Because I always stood out. Like my whole, my mum and I really relate on that level. Like we've never fit in. And it hasn't been until more recent years that now we own that and we love it. We're like, yeah, we don't want to fit in. Like we don't want to be part of the crowd, because now that we know what that's all about, we're just like, that's
so awesome.
Yeah. And that's why we're like, no wonder we never fit in our whole lives, you know. But when you're, you know, I lived in Sydney. I was very much, especially in the last decade. So in the last 10 years before I moved up to the Northern Rivers, I was actually in the inner west of Sydney, very woke, like I was in it. So, you know, you just kind of, you know, trying to just get along to go along to get along, go along to get along. Yeah, I'm so smart.
Right. I'm just starting to speak Aboriginal there. Go along to get along.
Yeah, but no, I definitely did. And the alcohol too was very much, I mean, and because the drugs were more like party drugs, so that was kind of weekend, but
so like acid or
no, God, no.
meth?
No, definitely not. No, it was like MDMA, cocaine. I think I tried speed like once, but they were like the main ones, and just lots of alcohol.
That's such a foreign world to me. I'm just like,
yeah.
I still grew up in you know, Bible Belt, Texas, where meth and MDMA were like the same thing. Like they both put holes in your brains.
Yeah.
It's the devil.
Yeah.
And shit, now people are using MDMA as therapy. So.
I know, it's so crazy. Well, I mean, it's like, it can definitely be used therapeutically, but most people are doing it recreationally, and there's no, you know, they don't know how much they're taking, and people are overdosing. And like I saw some pretty real shit like during that time, like at events and stuff, like people were overdosing and things like that. It's horrible, horrible, horrible scene. And now that I know what those events are all about, like the energy harvesting and all of that, like they're not nice places to be at all. Like I look back now and I just think, ugh. But and I think, you know, the drinking was the worst for me. Like I definitely had a problem with drinking at one point in time because I was drinking all the time, and that's when I like that was around the time when I was just like, this isn't fun anymore, because I would drink socially, I would drink alone, I would drink at home, I would drink when I was out. I would just drink all the time, and I would find any excuse to do it. You know, if I'd had a bad day, I'm like, oh, I had such a shit day, I'm going to have a drink. Or if I'd had a good day, I'm going to have a drink to celebrate. Like, you know, so I definitely battled with that a little bit. And again, fast forwarding now, I look back and it was really to dissociate. It was to numb myself out and not feel what I was feeling. I think, you know, again, I had no awareness of this back then, but I wasn't living in alignment. I wasn't living authentically. I wasn't being my true self. And so I felt pretty miserable a lot of the time. And the things that made me feel good were I was getting externally. So that doesn't last, you know. It was like, you know, I'd be great when, you know, a guy came along and I had this new relationship, and then, you know, that would like turn to shit pretty quickly. And then like during that time too, my relationship. So I've had like 3 major relationships since my first relationship was at 23. And so, well, before you, I'll just clarify, before you, I had 3 major relationships, and they were all pretty horrible. Like they were, and not, I don't want to like bash the people I was with at all. I have, a lot of respect for my last 2 partners, especially, and I have nothing bad to say about them. But where I was at was a reflection. I'll say those relationships that I were in were a reflection of where I was at. So they were highly codependent. They were quite toxic in a lot of ways. Just super, super unbalanced. And so it wasn't until around the age of 24, I was actually diagnosed with bipolar 2, which is, it's the form of bipolar where the bouts of depression are worse than the mania. And so that's what, because I kind of self-diagnosed because I was like, I would go through like these depressive, episodes, and then, which felt like all the time. And then I'd kind of have these like, it was such a pendulum swing. Like there was no balance in my life whatsoever. So that's what it was like. I'd be really depressed, and then I'd be like super high and like feeling amazing for, maybe a week, and then I'd crash, and then I'd feel terrible again. So I actually went to the Black Dog Institute in Australia, which is like, again, it's just,
Black Dog Institute.
Yeah, it's pretty well known. Like if you ever look up mental health illness stuff online, you'll usually get Black Dog Institute articles and things like that. So I went there and I got diagnosed by a psychiatrist, and like he literally diagnosed me, and in the next breath was like, so this is what we prescribe for bipolar 2, and like you pretty much, you'll pretty much be on it for the rest of your life. And I was like, nah. I was like, no thanks. And I just said to him, I said, look, medication is a last resort for me. I'd rather do things the natural way. And I guess that's really what started my journey, like my personal journey with health and taking full responsibility for my health. So I literally just started by cleaning up my diet and like exercising. That was really like the 2 main things I started doing and like focusing on and really making that a priority. And honestly, I feel like within a year, I'd say, I just felt like the bipolar 2 thing, it wasn't even a thing.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, how much did changing your diet actually affect your mental state?
Oh, like so much. And I actually realized too that I would often get triggered because I used to be a bit of a binge eater as well. So like I'd eat super, super healthy, and then like, the weekend would come or whatever, and I would just like binge on like everything because it'd be alcohol. I'd get like junk food. I'd go out for dinners. Whatever it was, I was always binging. And again, it was always the pendulum swing. There was no balance. So I was either like working out and exercising and eating well and like doing all the things, or I was not doing anything. I was like couch potato, junk food, alcohol, weed, whatever it was. And I realized that the junk food was actually triggering the moods a lot of the time, which makes total sense to me now, because just on an energetic level, like you're eating like food products. It's not even real food. Like they're products that are made in labs, basically.
And they contribute to, I don't think that all bipolar is just a mental chemical imbalance, but the sugars and the processed stuff would contribute to a chemical imbalance if it was that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, back then that's what I was told. Like it's a chemical imbalance in your brain and all this stuff. And like, what I know now, the chemical imbalance thing with mental illness that's not the case at all whatsoever.
Yeah. And we'll do some episodes with people that can really
100%
dig deep into that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Yeah. Because I was just listening to a podcast recently that talked about how most of those chemicals that they say, it's a chemical imbalance in your brain, they're actually made by your gut bacteria in your gut, which again makes a lot of sense, because when you're eating lots of junk food and drinking alcohol, that's literally destroying your gut microbiome. And so there's a lot of dysregulation that comes from that. So it makes total sense that I was actually being like triggered into these mood swings a lot of the time by that.
And just the nature of the food that you're eating too, it's energy is resonating and creating sort of a field in your gut biome. So if you're eating like where you are now, just to jump ahead, it's like so natural, organic, local, blessed.
Yeah.
Even the water has like good energy going through it.
Yeah.
So that's going to create a totally different field than where you were back then.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's like night and day now.
And your mom tried. Like your mom's really been the I don't know, the center mass of the whole family ship.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
trying. Did you get into the health stuff that she was into and the AVN, and you can get to that in the line you want to, or in the sequence you want to go to.
Yeah, just to rewind a little. So when my mum started researching vaccines and like we went super healthy, like the first 5 years of my brother's life, our whole family was vegetarian, and for one of those years we went full vegan. And because my mum was, after she had my brother, she stayed at home with him until he started school. So she was like making all of our food from scratch, like because I mean, back then too, you didn't have like, you know, the fake meats now and all the, you know, the alternate meat products and even just like pre-made foods. It was much harder to get vegetarian and vegan food back then that was already like made for you. So she just made everything from scratch, and it was like before, you know, the internet was like very new back then. So it wasn't like she could just like, just pop on and, you know, find a recipe online. She bought like vegetarian cookbooks and like she was amazing. But then when my brother went back to school, she went back to uni, she became a teacher. And so then I guess we went back to eating meat just out of convenience because it was much easier to buy sort of, you know, prepared meats and stuff, and it was easy to throw dinners and lunches together. So, you know, and over the years, I also went back and forth between vegetarianism and veganism, probably in my later teen years, and then into my 20s. So coming back to that bipolar diagnosis, that's kind of what led me to go and study nutrition, because when I really focused on that, I used to meal prep and like, you know, I love to cook, as you know. Mm-hmm. I love to cook. I love being in the kitchen. Like I really feel like that's part of my creative expression is when it comes to food. So I was doing that, and I actually had like my mom and like other family members were like, hey, can you like food prep for me? Like, would you come over and help me food prep? And I was like, and someone actually said to me, you should like make a business out of that. Cause like those meal prep companies had just started back then. And I was like, that's such a great idea. And I was like, how would I even start that? And I was like, I should go and study nutrition. So I actually know, you know, so that's what led me to go and study. And I actually studied holistic nutrition. And in that course, we touched on, you know, like TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, and traditional European medicine. So I love that because it was it was very much like the physical and very scientific, but there were, you know, little bits of that, you know, the energetics of food and how that these, you know, more ancient traditional modalities looked at food and the energetics within and how each person has a constitution. So I loved it. I loved studying. And even during that time, I went vegan. Well, I was like plant-based. So I actually ate seafood. I didn't give up all meat, but I would eat seafood, but everything else was completely plant-based. And I felt great for a while. And then after about a year, maybe, I wasn't feeling fantastic. And I actually saw a kinesiologist and she did all this testing on me. And she's like, I think you have oxalate toxicity. Which is oxalates are just something in particularly like certain vegetables, nuts and seeds. So a lot of the stuff I was eating a lot of. And again, you know, the oxalate toxicity thing can be arguable, but it essentially it was out of balance.
So for people that don't know what a kinesiologist is,
muscle testing. So she muscle tested me.
What's that?
So muscle testing, I actually use muscle testing in PSYCH-K. It's a little bit, the way I use it in PSYCH-K is very different to applied kinesiology. But it's basically where you can ask your body questions, and through the muscle testing, you can get strong and weak responses that basically give you yes/no responses. So in her case, that was more applied kinesiology. So she would kind of, I can't even tell you what she did. It's funny because she's just really quick and she's doing all these things and then she's like, so you've got this. And I'm like, oh, okay. So one of our lights has just gone out. So I've come more into balance now, even more so with my diet. But I ended up leaving. I didn't finish my bachelor's degree in the nutrition course. I graduated with an advanced diploma. And then since then, I actually left because I was working full time. And fast forward to now, I moved up to the Northern Rivers. About a year ago, I met Dave Armstrong and Tom Barnett through the LFM and, became really good friends with them. And obviously just being part of that platform and all of the, the amazing knowledge, and the people that they get on and all that has to offer, I really started delving into more self-directed learning. And what I've learned now about health and nutrition compared to what I learned in those 3 years at uni, completely trumps everything I learned back then. And I guess it really flipped it on its head because, we were taught during that course, even though it's a holistic nutrition course, we were taught that allopathic medicine is the ultimate, I remember them actually teaching us, they give you a definition of allopathic medicine and what it means and why it's so great and that basically you're under this model. And, one of the subjects you have to do is pharmacology because you have to know the interactions with certain nutrients. And for the naturopaths, because they do the same training as we do, but they do an extra year of naturopathy, they have to learn the interactions with herbal supplements. And one of the lectures in that subject was on vaccination and how great it was. So there were things that didn't sit right with me. For the most part, I had a great experience. I had some really amazing lecturers and I learned so much great stuff. But now I look back and I'm just like, yeah, because it's another manipulated institution to push certain agendas. And, they say it's holistic nutrition, but it's the holistic side of it is such a small part of it. And now what I know about quote unquote holistic nutrition is so much more than what you're taught at uni or, at college in my case. So yeah, fast forward to now, I just kind of went on this journey of just studying different things, I guess, that interested me, listening to different people talk about different aspects of health. I really started to understand more about the energetics involved in health. And I really got into self-development because, so I think I did my NLP course first. So I had done a workshop, a weekend workshop years ago, that his whole take, it was a self-development thing, but his whole take is sort of through hypnotherapy and he'd done NLP training. And so, that came into my awareness and I was like, yeah, I think I actually want to study that. Because at the time I wanted to apply it to my nutrition work. And so I did that course, absolutely loved it, because I guess it just teaches you how to use NLP techniques in coaching or working with people. And so you have to do all of the practices and the exercises yourself. So it was awesome. Got a lot out of that. And I definitely, at that point in my life, I had moved up to the Northern Rivers by then, finally got out of Sydney. And I guess moving here, I just came more into alignment with myself. I started learning all these different things. And that kind of one thing just kept leading me to the next thing, And I just kept going deeper into, I guess, the inner work. So it kind of started with the self-development, which sometimes can be kind of mainstream. But then that really led me into doing more, inner work and now what I know as shadow work. And yeah, that led me to PSYCH-K, which is the modality I work with now, which is all about rewriting subconscious beliefs. And yeah, my understanding of that now is how important our belief systems are to our health, because it all starts in the mind, right? Your mental state affects your emotional state, affects your physical body. So I think I spent a long time focusing on the physical and trying to fix things at a physical level. And it only got me so far. When I started doing the really deep healing work on an emotional, mental, and spiritual level, now where I'm at, like, and I'm still learning, you know, this is a process that I believe everyone's going to be going through for pretty much our whole lives. But where I'm at now, I'm so much more balanced. I'm so much more content in who I am and the gifts I have to offer. You know, I manifested the most perfect man for me, and we'll get into how we met. But yeah, everything just came into alignment more and more the more I delved into these other aspects of health.
So good. I was just laughing to myself because it's the similar process or similar chain of realizations that I went through. Because I remember when I first learned about NLP, I was self-discovering it as part of my quest to become selected for the Special Forces. It's actually the first time I heard about Tony Robbins, neuro-linguistic programming. I got a book about it that I didn't even read, but I just remembered one tip from him, and it actually made a big difference, which is how you speak to the subconscious. You know, you speak to it in affirmative language only because that's what it understands. And there's a bunch more to it, but that's so, it's just like it's like a return trip. Now we're back to some of those early things where it's such an important thing, and it's kind of a mainstay of how we live our lives, how we navigate. You know, just everyone has normal ups and downs. We've just kind of identified through a bit of a trial by fire what the best ways are, or what the best ways we know now to navigate those ups and downs.
And I think like getting to know yourself, like that was such a big part of my journey because, you know, obviously when COVID hit and the world went a bit crazy, like a lot of people woke up to, you know, the trickery and all the lies we've been told and all of this stuff. But a lot of people, and I think we saw this a lot, like especially, you know, 2021, 2022, people just stayed there. You know, they just stayed in this like, well, fuck the government and like, we've got to fight the government and fight everything and the elite and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, well, that's just one aspect of it. You know, I think that, you know, and the people, like a lot of the friends that we've made and how we connected, we've met a lot of people that was just the catalyst. And I definitely feel that for me was like, that was like the catalyst to actually go, whoa. I mean, because I think for everyone, I know for me in 2021, I was like, whoa. I just started seeing the whole world through like a completely different lens. It was so crazy. And, you know, that quote unquote waking up process is just that. It's a process. It's not like you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm awake now. I'm like totally enlightened and I understand everything. It's like, no, because to have been fooled by the lies, I mean, I think that's the hardest thing for some people to admit is that they've been tricked, they've been lied to, and they accepted these lies and they've built their whole lives on them.
And that you've taken part in the lie.
Yeah. So, and then that's really where you have to look at yourself and like look at these shadow parts of yourself that allowed you to be tricked and lied to. And like, there's so many layers of conditioning. And I think that's what really resonated for me with PSYCH-K when I started learning all this stuff about, you know, the way that we're conditioned, you know, societally and through our families and through religion and through all these different aspects. That the power of knowing your subconscious and knowing who you are and knowing your body, because another aspect of shadow work is that the body is the shadow. So the body carries all of our trapped emotions. It carries all of our stored trauma. It carries everything. It carries so much memory of our lineage even. So really learning to connect to that. And it is a process. Like you've really got to go through, I think, lots of different experiences and come into different schools of thought and schools of knowledge around that stuff, because there is no one way to get to it, and every individual is different. And I guess that's what I wanted to ask you, like if you wanted to share a little bit about your sort of healing journey, or whatever you want to call it, like up until the point that we met, and then we can talk about how we met. But like what led you to kind of get to where you are today, especially like coming out of the military and I guess the conditioning around that, and, you know, your experience with relationships and your family and upbringing and all of that.
Yeah, well, I think there's there's one thing that I want to like focus on, which is it relates back to the natural AF idea, which is getting down to your essence of who you are without all the artificial, the projections, the mask that we put on, and even in the past, like the ideas that I thought were like really mine that I came to realize were also part of my programming and conditioning, you know, and I know it now, like it's very obvious. I wanted to be, as a little kid, I wanted to be in the military. I used to play with G.I. Joes. I used to watch, you know, Rambo with my brothers and my dad. And that guided me and sort of, you know, I played that out in my life. And it wasn't a game, but I thought it was real, but it was really just kind of make-believe made real, made manifest. And I think there's so many men that go through that and will never admit that, that have a similar thing. But I remember hearing all these different guys just sitting around after we'd done a hard day of training in the Army, talking about this movie and that movie. Everyone's always talking about movies. Everyone's always talking about, oh, this one, I saw this, and that made me move to California. I remember one guy talked about Point Break. And two guys were just jamming out on the idea of moving to California because of the movie Point Break.
Yeah.
And I'm reflecting, I'm like, I joined the military because I wanted to learn Russian from watching Rambo when he fights the Russians in Afghanistan. And this idea of, you know, just, what was it, Riddick? The idea of like being capable of killing people but doing it for good, you know?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because like I'm sure so many people can relate to that, where they've like had an idea or again like manifested things in their life that were based on like what they've seen in a movie or something they've heard in a song. And like, as we know now, that's the stuff that conditions us. So you know, they can think like, oh yeah, it was my idea, but it's almost like the seed was planted from something external that wasn't actually coming from you. Yeah.
And it's not necessarily good or bad. It's definitely an intention put in by other people with their own agenda, be it the quote unquote military industrial complex, which is very close, very neck and neck with Hollywood and the CIA and how they use it to program, if you've heard of things like Operation Mockingbird and all these things. And I've been researching stuff like that. Some of it before I joined the military when I was in my early 20s, and a lot of it later. But we're at the point now where we're kind of undoing that conditioning, and we're piece by piece, as things come up, we realize and release, and then peer inside, look at who we really are, and look at who we really want to become going forward. And we're both on this beautiful journey of kind of coming out of the woods and then realizing that we can have a profound impact on the world around us, on the direction our lives take, and figuring out how we're going to express who we truly are. And that includes connecting to, you know, higher parts of ourselves, finding ways to access that, and being a part of a community that does that. Like our family down here, both Alexa's like physical family plus the soul family that we've got around us. Yeah. It's so amazing to see. Yeah. A lot of us on this similar path.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you want to share a little, because I mean, for anyone that doesn't know Isaac, you can go back and listen to, I think it's episode 0. It was the very first episode he did. It was just him. He talked a little bit about himself and shared some stuff. But do you want to talk a little more about sort of what led you, like after you left the military, sort of what led you to start to do some of the healing, like your own shadow work and that, because that's kind of led you to us meeting in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's such a, I mean, it could be a long story, but I'll make it sort of shortened. So a big part of my story is the wounding that wasn't super dramatic, but it was enough growing up, being the youngest of 3 brothers. I have an older sister as well. But I had this drive to compete, and the natural, good abilities. I was, physically pretty well adapted to competing with brothers that were bigger and stronger than I was. But I just had this drive to like push myself, and then eventually realized that it wasn't just because I'm competing with them. I just had this drive to better myself. But I had this strong relationship with my gut where I would just, follow this gut instinct and go, which is, we can talk about, not today, but we'll do some stuff on human design and
I didn't
why that
even
is.
touch on that that was a big part of my journey too, like learning my human design, and not just human design, but there's so
that's a
many,
key thing.
human design, astrology, both Western and Vedic or sidereal. There's so many different modalities out there that can help you to get to know yourself on a much deeper level. And human design 100% did that for me, and helped us so much getting to know each other, because that was one of the things that we knew very early on in our relationship was each other's human design and how we operate. And love human design.
Yeah, it's a great tool. And what I can see now, I've since reframed, you talked a little bit about your past relationships, and I had my own adventures and all that. What I see now is that that gut response led me in a lot of these relationships that were painful and ended, sometimes dramatically. But it was, what I see now with more grace and hindsight was they were leading me towards the path of healing. For whatever reason, I'm the kind of man that has to go and bump his head, a few times before he remembers to duck, and,
He's a 3-5 sacral manifesting generator, guys. So for anyone that knows human design, you know exactly what that
you
means.
can pretty much tell me my whole story now.
Yeah.
So I would decide, this feels right. I'm just going to go and do it. This feels right. I'm just going to go and do it. And go until it doesn't feel right. But I had, there was abandonment. There was, I was cheated on early on that wounded me, that led to pushing the softer, sensitive side of me into my subconscious. And then I went into the army and wanted to kill people, wanted to fight, wanted to jump out of planes. So really expressing this unconscious death urge that isn't always bad, because it wasn't like I wanted to die consciously, but it was just like I wanted to go right to the edge and stare death in the face. I wanted to face my shadow this whole time and didn't know how. I was facing it bit by bit in the army, but I didn't know that's what I was doing. I didn't know that's what I was being trained to do, which is to face your fears, integrate the monster, so to speak. A lot of guys in the special operations world, special forces, Green Berets, all that, talk a little bit about that. There was a key aspect of that movie, Riddick, where he talks about becoming the monster, and sometimes the monster is what you need to fight the bigger monster. So there is a part of that shadow integration, but people don't understand that that's what it is. So anyways, bumped my head, found another relationship. That ended my career in the military because my partner back then kept getting involved in legal issues, and the military, the special operations community does not like when you're married to somebody who keeps getting arrested. So, and similar thing. She had bipolar. There was a lot more going on than that. Back then I used to think, especially after having that experience with somebody who's bipolar, a lot of guys in the military, a lot of people commonly, especially men, they tend to just judge the idea of bipolar and just being like, that's just a judgment on who that person is. They're bipolar. They're crazy as shit. They'll never get over it. They're someone you want to avoid, which isn't necessarily true. I had some military friends that told me later that they were bipolar younger, and they changed it by changing their diet and exercising. So it's interesting that was what came up for you. But anyways, so from that relationship, earlier on, I won't go through all of them, but so basically I'm going to do a half episode to explain the 3 failed marriages and this healing journey and the shadow work more in depth, because I want to like really dig into it, as you can tell. But the biggest thing was, before we met, I had really started to, before I knew what shadow work was, I knew that I needed to change, that I was the problem. It doesn't let them off the hook, whoever the issues with the people that I was in relationships with, but my responsibility is all that I can, take charge of. I can't fix the other people. I have to take charge of who I am, what my part was in attracting and accepting their behavior and tolerating it, and letting myself be treated the way that I was treated, that drew out, this like fierce self-protective stuff.
Because just to fill in the gap a little, after that second relationship, you ended up in another relationship that had like obviously different person, slightly different issues maybe in the relationship, but a lot of the same behavioral patterns, right? A lot of the same patterns were getting repeated in that relationship. And that's when you really realized that.
Yeah, I realized this behavior keeps turning up in the people that I'm with. And I just had to be honest and be like, it's not them that's the problem, it's me. If I'm going about my life in the same way that I always have been, I'll just continue to attract the same things into my life. And to really make a change, which, going through different catalyzations and changes in my life is kind of a big defining thing. When I really decide that I want to make a change, I find a way to do it. And that's where I sought help. I found Urosmos. And then when I say sought help, I didn't just go to like a psychologist and be like, let's sit on the couch and I'm going to cry and you're going to tell me what medication to put me on. Like I already knew all that was bullshit. But when Urosmos talked about shadow work and about using the body and about the way that they do the shadow work, which is actually physically going in and smashing the parts of the body.
Well, in your case, it was smashing up your
yeah.
legs and stuff.
Not smashing like with a hammer, but where they walk on it and like for extended periods of time as you breathe. And the breath is a big part of it. So the breath work, the body work, and then the one-on-one personal coaching that I got with him, and where I opened up to this idea of, what you push into the shadow, what you push into your subconscious returns to your life, essentially as a mirror. But there's a full quote. Do you remember the quote from Jung about the shadow and all that?
Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you'll call it fate. Is that the one you're talking
something
about?
Like that. Yeah. Such a key thing. So that was a big thing. I made it unconscious conscious.
You might have mentioned this. I still haven't listened to the episode with Urosmos while we're recording. By the time this is out, I will have. And you might have gone into it. But how did you meet Urosmos? Like, how did you come across him?
I listened to AlphaCast, and he and Sophie, it was episode 137, I believe, on AlphaCast, because I was just looking it up before this show. And yeah, they talked about their work. They talked a little bit about human design, but it was the body work that I was like, yeah, this is something right up my alley.
Yeah. And it's a perfect example too of like, look at the shadow work we've each done and how different, like you got more into the body work stuff and like that kind of, whereas I got like more into, I guess, like the subconscious programming and more from the mental aspect, which, now I've realized like I'm very much up in my mind and like for me now I'm going through my journey with like getting back into my body and, and again, it's like on different levels and like using different modalities and, it's such a process of unconditioning and I would say reconditioning, because conditioning in and of itself isn't a bad thing. It's how it's geared. So obviously in society, a lot of our conditioning is geared in a negative, very negative way, to dumb us down, to like put us off our life, our purpose, what we're meant to be here to do, to put us, move us away from our natural gifts. But you can, when you're reconditioning, you can be whoever you want. So it's
true.
Yeah. So if the subconscious mind believes that you're a friggin' rock star and you can do anything you put your mind to, that's exactly what you'll do. That's what you'll manifest physically. So I guess that's really what led us to meet in a way, because you worked with Urosmos and
it's such a cool chain reaction too, because it was before all this happened, I was sort of in hiding in a way, where I had another failed relationship and I ended up leaving that. It was in Israel and I left Israel. Don't worry, I'm not affiliated with anything military-wise going on in that region. This was more just me following one of two heads. And but I came home and I basically swore off of women. This is no joke. Like for 7 years, I didn't say I'm going to do this for 7 years. I just was like, I'm not dating. I'm going to figure out my shit, figure out my finances. I ended up not really figuring out my shit, but I figured out
But this
some
was
of my
way
finances.
before you met me. This was
This
like
is way
between
before.
your second and
This is
third
like 14
relationship.
years ago.
Yeah.
Was it 14?
It was ages ago.
It's like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
A little over 10. But that hiding process, in that hiding is when I had a lot of time to, because my job in the oil field, I went to the oil field anyways. I had lots of time to research stuff, and that's where I found Owen Benjamin. Here's this guy screaming, not screaming, but he's yelling. He's wearing a raincoat. It's raining. He's got a fire. He's drinking White Claws.
Oh, so this is when you got to witness like the spiral or the years of spiraling. I came on board with Owen way after that.
Yeah, Owen still thought dinosaurs existed at this point. And I'm over there researching, because I know human anatomy, and I was researching Nephilim and giants and found Rob Skiba, and we'll talk about some of that stuff maybe in the future. But so Owen, being who he is, he just, he's interesting guy, very truth-oriented, talks to all kinds of people. I don't know who introduced him to AlphaCast. Maybe just one of the listeners or one of the people close to Owen mentioned it. So he went on AlphaCast, I think.
Yeah.
And I heard about it. I went over and listened, and it was Dr. Berlando and Mike Winter. And I was like, oh, these guys are pretty interesting. They've got lots of cool stuff. So I started listening to their show because I had all this time. I could listen to 3 hours of Owen and then go and listen to, another 2 hours of, Mike and Berlando. And then Yerasimos popped on. So I started listening to Here for the Truth. But I messaged Yerasimos on Instagram after listening to him on AlphaCast. And, after I met him, and he did the work for me for 5 days, I immediately went to Music and Sky, which is a festival that Mike Winter helps organize and put on, very similar to what's going on down here. But it was, just this cool chain of reaction where I can just look back now with gratitude and just see, even when I thought I was running away and I'm just, bored, it's the path has these threads that were there and pulled me in. And as long as I at some point made a decision to show up and do the work, you can just look back, it's so wild, just so clearly, and just see you're never really abandoned. You're never really, you might feel like you're just floating listlessly doing your thing, or you make mistakes and you feel like you're doing everything wrong, but the path is still there. The path is defined. You may not even know that you're on it, but you're on it.
Well, life's always working for you, right? Like, this is one of the things that's so conditioned into us. Like, something bad happens and it's like, oh, I can't believe this happened to me. Why does this always happen to me? And I used to think like that. Like, I look back now and, like, especially my teen years, so when I was, like, very depressed and stuff, like, I was so pessimistic and, like, I had such a negative outlook on life. And I was one of those people. I was like, why has this always happened to me? And now, like, and again, this took me years and years to get to where I am now. But now when something happens that's like not, I didn't plan it, or it seems like it's gone wrong or whatever, I can almost instantaneously be like, why am I not meant to do, like, why has this happened so that I can't go to this event now? Like, I just accept it. I'm just like, I'm just not meant to go to that. I'm just not meant to do that or be there, or like whatever the thing is. And especially, when you look back, like, I can look back on so many times in my life where, something quote unquote bad happened, but it actually, if that hadn't happened, it wouldn't have led me to something, or I could have ended up in a really bad situation if that hadn't happened. And
think about not even just the bad situations, but remember we were planning on going back to the States and being there for Bear Fest, and that didn't end up working out. And then we're like, oh, I guess we will be here for the LFM festival.
The Living Free Festival,
Because before that, you're like, oh, I'm kicking myself because we're not going to be there for the LFM festival.
Yeah, initially, that's right.
And then you know, what happened after that? Like
Yeah.
you know, you can talk about it if you want. We, you know, meeting
Yeah.
Mike Winter again,
Well,
and Alex Zach.
Let's back up a bit. Yeah, we did meet them and they're awesome. Love them. Hope that we get them on
So many
sooner rather than later.
synchronicities and
Yeah.
like weird like parallel things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just rewinding a bit,
Yeah.
how we ended up meeting was, so you met Erasmus, you did this work with him. That's how you got onto the podcast. I came across his co-host Joel Rafidi through one of the rallies I went to when I was still living in Sydney. Joel performed, and that's how he kind of got on my radar. And I came across the Here for the Truth podcast through him. And for those that don't know, Joel's obviously Australian. Erasmus is from the States, and they created their Friends of the Truth group. Mm-hmm. And so Erasmus had invited you in. I just felt very called to join after, well, I got really into the podcast, and then I actually listened to like every episode. And I think that was probably around the time they had about 100 or so episodes. So I listened to every episode and I was like, I have to join this community.
Yeah,
like,
it's a good show.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I still listen. I love, it's
same.
such a great podcast. And you know, we both joined and we're both on, you know, other sides of the world. And I was very open because at that time I was doing lots of work on myself. I had completely transformed. This is when I started my PSYCH-K training, and I had completely transformed my beliefs around relationships. So for actually most of my life, I didn't want to ever get married. I didn't want to have kids. And it sounds so weird to even say now because that's like literally I feel like part of my life's purpose is to like have children and like help to raise future generations. But I was so at that point like so open. I was like ready to meet someone, and like in the introduce yourself section of the group thing, the group chat, I was like, yep, I'm ready to meet someone. And, you know, I can't wait to have babies and all this stuff. And I actually forgot this, but Isaac reminded me like probably like almost a year later. And I was like, I totally forgot that I said that. But I'd actually written like a little PS message underneath. And I was like, PS, I love me an American accent. So if you know any single Americans, and
then something about a beard.
Yes, well, because I do, yeah.
That was like a requirement.
Absolutely required. Yeah, that's an absolute requirement for me. And anyway, and there Isaac was, but at the time, I mean, he was still, your last relationship had ended, but you still weren't divorced yet, but you were separated. And like, so when we first started talking, it was really just as friends. I mean, and the first.
There's so much that's happened in this past year. There was some jail time. There was like it really cemented the trust in our relationship.
We could do a whole episode just on like the first year of our relationship. But
I was teaching breath work in jail to a guy who'd just come off of a meth.
Oh yeah, I remember.
thing.
And you came out and you were telling me, and I was like, I feel like you were meant to. Maybe that was the reason you got thrown in jail, like to meet this guy, and you probably really helped him.
That's one of the reasons. But yeah, no, it all ended up fine. Charges dropped. I'm good. But it's like definitely a wake up call, but also, just relieving yourself of that pressure and that burden and like the self judgment. That was a big thing for me to like get over. And we still worked on it with PSYCH-K, and maybe we'll touch on what PSYCH-K is, and why it was such a transformational thing for you. Because that to me was, I didn't see you or know you before you had gone through PSYCH-K and done some of these balances and shifted some really big things in your life.
That's right. Yeah, you didn't know me before at all. And it's funny because I had kind of like gotten to this point where I was like, no, I do want to have kids. And I mean, because that kind of changed for me like years ago with my one of my ex-partners. But I was still, because my subconscious mind didn't believe that I was worthy, didn't believe that it was possible to find the right man and be with him forever. Like after that relationship, because that was the relationship where I was like, oh no, I actually do want to have kids, whatever. Then it ended. And then in my next relationship, which was only very short-lived, but that whole time following that second relationship, I was constantly telling the story that I just want to meet a good man that is going to be able to like co-parent and be amicable if we have children and don't end up together. So I was constantly telling this story, which goes to show where my head was at. I was like, yeah, I want to have kids, but it's probably not going to work out. So I need to make sure I'm with a good man that is going to be able to do all those things if we're not together.
Well, maybe he goes to jail and you have to raise him.
So this was all the stuff that I had to transform, because when I moved out of Sydney and moved to the Northern Rivers, I was like, yeah, I felt like I was starting this new chapter in my life and really wanted to meet someone. And when I first started putting myself out there to meet people, I was finding that I was still kind of like meeting the same types of guys, like not like they were very different. But I could already see, and again, because, awareness is so important when it comes to, I believe it's the first step of any change or transformational growth is being aware of your bullshit, basically. And I just was noticing that some of the guys that I was meeting, I was just like, doesn't feel right. This feels like old stuff still. So yeah, so that's when I did PSYCH-K, and I really would love to get Rosie on. Rosie's my instructor, and she's amazing. So we'll definitely get her on probably later in the year when I do my next training course. And she just explains things so beautifully, way better than I can. I can do the processes, but she can explain things just so much better than me. So, and it was just the way it happened too. Like we started talking just as friends. It was very platonic. The first conversation we had outside of the group privately was about the moon, and how it's, when you test, and you can do these experiments at home, guys, highly recommend, especially if you've got kids. It's really fun.
I'm a doer. I'm not just a thinker.
Yeah. You can just go out and test with a thermometer, but those, what are they called? Like those laser light thermometers. If you test the temperature in the moonlight compared to the shadow, it's always colder in the moonlight, which completely blows the whole, the sun's just reflecting its light off the moon. Because if that were the case, and the sun radiates heat, if that were the case, it would actually be warmer in the moon. Yeah. Right? So,
or if it's reflecting and it's not even, because it shouldn't even be that much. You shouldn't even be able to detect any temperature difference.
Change, yeah.
But the fact that it's colder, and it's consistently colder, gives you a kind of what the fuck moment. Like, what is this?
Anyway, don't nerd out too hard. So that was the first conversation that we actually had together, and then it was just very platonic. I really wasn't, to be completely honest, I wasn't even like that attracted to him at first, because we were talking about this the other day. His profile picture, his little thumbnail photo, was like him with no beard. So that's like a deal breaker for me. No beard.
When I was a lesbian, that's what I thought was cool back then.
Yeah.
Driving my Subaru.
Yeah. And then
listening to Sarah McLachlan.
And anyway, and then it just grew from there. Like and again, like we mentioned human design and like astrology and stuff, we kind of knew these deeper aspects of ourselves, and we were learning about them individually, and then like when we we're getting to know each other, it played such a big role in how well we got to know each other. And obviously with the distance, we had no other option than there was no physicality, there was no kissing, there was no touching, there was no even option of sex, which we both say now, it's such a great way to start a relationship, because we really laid the foundation. And I think we really I was the one who first said, I think I'm falling in love with you, and it was before we'd met in person. But I think the feelings that grew and the love that we had for each other felt really pure. For me anyway, when I look back on my previous relationships and how they all started, it was I slept with them pretty early on. I kind of fell into all the relationships. It wasn't very conscious. It wasn't I really want to meet someone. It was just I met this person and we kind of click, and it's it's cool, and I just kind of ended up in the relationship. It was very conscious with you. It was very it just felt very pure. And then when we finally met in person, when you came out to Australia so this was August of last year, it just felt like it just felt like our relationship just solidified. Like we were here in person, in front of each other. Like it took us like half a day to even like get the first kiss in, because I had actually said to him, I was like, don't like just run up to me and like kiss me the first time you meet me at the airport.
Hollywood movie where we're slow-mo running to each other.
Yeah, I was literally like in the line at the airport, with 1,000 other cars.
I think I was wearing this exact shirt.
Oh my God, you were too, with your black pants and your Vans. I remember the outfit.
Yeah. I'm not wearing any pants right now. I'm just kidding. No, the thing I was going to say about that too is we still had some of our mess and some of our junk that we're working on bit by bit. We still do. Like we're still
Absolutely.
It's not like it's this, I mean, it is basically like a happy ending, but it's not, it's not an ending at all. It's just, I think we both arrived at a new, not just a chapter, a new book in our lives at around the same time. Something significant changed in our consciousness and our vibration and however you wanted to say that. And this became a possibility. Whereas before it was like, I mean, it was still a possibility, but it was like, I wasn't looking for a relationship. I had just gone through, this kind of, wake up harrowing process. And it still baffles me, but I'm just like, this directed path, oh, the wind's picking up. It's like a blend of free will and choosing to step into our destinies. And then also kind of feeling like being fired out of a cannon across the ocean. So
that's how your life feels for you. I do not relate to that at all.
Yeah, but Alexa's literally, she's very like, sit here, manifest, bring it in. And I'm over here just like, launching into an adventure. But
yeah. But that was such
like the relationship didn't follow any of the same patterns we had in the past. It doesn't feel like in the past, you can definitely see where I was it's like self-sabotaging and destructive, but trying to find happiness. And this was more about stepping into my power and stepping into destiny.
And I think that was also like, because we talk about this a lot, and I'm sure we'll do future episodes where we'll talk about this like way more in depth. But we both saw the importance of doing our inner work as individuals and then starting the relationship knowing that this is going to be a lifelong journey of healing and like working through your shit. And
such a good distinction.
And not projecting, because and what I also find interesting is that like when we got to know each other through doing this work ourselves, we actually both had really similar relationship patterns. Like both of us were very like in these codependent patterns in our relationships. They were quite toxic in a lot of ways. I think there was a lot of projection that obviously we saw later on from us and the people that we were with. So it was really good to, like, we had lots of conversations where we could recognize that in our previous relationships and were very conscious about not wanting to repeat those patterns and actually doing the work to heal those things within us. And then like now that we're together and, we live together, like it was a big transition. Like you moved from the other side of the world and, I live in this a little cabin in the woods basically. And, it was just enough space for me. So it was a big transition for me, like having someone else in my space and in like quite a small space. So we had our challenges. I had some health challenges during that time, which we're going to do a whole episode on this, but I had breast implants for almost 8 years. I ended up getting really, really unwell. And that was after Isaac had moved in with me. And that really affected our relationship on a lot of levels. And
I moved here for the breast implants. Now they're not even there. I'm just kidding.
So there were lots of challenges, and that's what we say by like, it's not like, oh, happily ever after we met each other and everything's perfect now and like we're going to, everything's going to be sunshine and roses 24/7, because we've had lots of challenges and we have arguments and like we're just like every other couple. However, the way that we deal with them now compared to how we used to, very, very different. And I mean, that's one of the things I think I love the most about our relationship is knowing that. I think let me put it this way, it's like when you do the inner work yourself and you start to work through these things and then you realize like, this isn't the end of the world. Like I just needed to heal this thing. And now that I've done it, I can do it again. So when I'm triggered again, I can do it again. And it like you build this trust and this confidence in yourself to like be able to deal with anything that gets thrown at you. And I think the same works for relationships when, you know, things come up and you have disagreements and you have arguments, instead of them blowing up into this whole thing like, you know, you're not talking to each other for days and then you're like, oh, do I even want to be in this relationship? I'm just going to end it. And because that's how I used to think in my previous relationships, like a lot, where I was like, I'm just going to leave. Yeah, it's just not like that. It's like we can have our little spat and then go away and have our time alone to be like, where the fuck did that come from? What's going on? And then come together and actually sit and communicate effectively and just say how you're feeling, what came up for you, how I'm feeling, what came up for me, and both be able to own why we were triggered, but then also be able to say, but you know, when you did this, it made me feel like this. So, you know, can you just maybe not talk to me in that way? Or like whatever it is, that's just an example. But like, you know, we've also still got to be respectful of others.
Yeah, but it's just going into the deeper regions of those things, because there's still elements of the shadow that are integrating. It's like just listening back to that episode I did with Eurasimos and what we talked about then, I'm still integrating. You know, we have this joke where I'm just like sitting on the couch and Alexa's talking and, you know, saying something. I'm just like, shh, I'm integrating. Just having these moments. But it's a powerful process. And Alexa's such a good example. I was thinking in my head, that term empowered woman has taken on this whole shape in today's society that I find really annoying and fake. The whole idea of an empowered woman is shown to me, looks like the fake version is like a woman who's acting like a man.
Yeah, it's like the new age feminist thing where like women can do anything and female empowerment and like, which I was totally conditioned under that for quite a while.
Yeah, but real empowerment is finding out that you can alter what doctors want to just put you with medication on. You can alter that trajectory of your life with diet. You can find peace. You can find I don't know, just a beautiful relationship through actual manifestation, not, you know, pop Oprah manifestation. Like how the things actually work. Like you're so good at knowing what you want, which is pretty rare in women. I'm just saying, it's true. But you know what you want, and if you don't know how to get it, you just have this persistence and you figure out how to get to that. Whether it's relationship, whether it's the health that you want, you know, whether it's you know, using PSYCH-K to help, you know, people around you, to help your relationship with your own family, with me, with whoever. And not putting all these expectations on other people and sitting and being like, you know, what about me? You need to do this. For me, it's more of, and also not just being the endless servant where because a lot of women I think get trapped into that or trap themselves into it where they're giving too much without taking time for themselves.
Which I used to do. Yeah. And it's funny, like you're saying all these things, and thank you, it's such a compliment. But the reason I am the way I am now, and again, I just want to preface this and say I'm far from perfect. But the reason I'm like that now is because I wasn't for so long. You know, I was so like that. I gave too much of myself. I blamed other people for the way that I felt. You know, I externalized everything and I felt miserable. Like I wasn't happy, and like I felt like a victim to my, you know, quote unquote traumas and whatever. So that's what, you know, I was going to say, like, you know, for me, it's just like, why am I going to be, you know, constantly triggered by this thing that happened to me when I was a kid and feel like shit about it when I can just heal it? you know, and that's put very simply. It's not like you just like snap your fingers, oh, I'm healed now. Like, and you know, there's different modalities and there's different ways to go about it, but it's possible. And just knowing that it's possible, then like I said before, it's like a muscle that you strengthen. The more you do it, the better you get at it, the less triggered you get by the same, you know, by certain things. And, you know, it's just a process. And, you know, one of the things I've also come to realize is that, you know, when I first came into doing this work, I was kind of like, oh, I've just got to heal everything. I'm just going to go through my whole life and just heal all my traumas one by one. And it's like, it doesn't really work like that. Like I had to learn that was that the best way I believe that shadow work should be done is to just deal with things as they come up. Like life will let you know when you're ready to deal with something. You know, things will come up. Like, you know, and I know that for me with just certain like traumas or whatever you want. I know that word gets thrown around a bit, but like there were things that happened, you know, in my childhood and throughout my life that for most of my life, I wouldn't, there's no way I could have dealt with them. There's no way I could have healed from them. But as I started to come more into myself and started to do this work, they would just come up naturally when I would be ready to heal them. Like I've literally had memories that I had a vague memory of, but I couldn't remember. And then I've had memories come back spontaneously where I'm like, oh wow, that happened. Okay, I think I'm ready to heal it now. So your body, and that's the thing, it's like trusting your body, trusting your mind, trusting yourself, trusting God or source or the creator, whatever you want to call it, and trusting life that it will never give you anything that you can't handle. And I think that goes for doing this kind of work. Yeah,
and that, you know, maybe we can tie this into Natural AF and why that's part of this. Perfect. Why us sharing our relationship story even matters on a podcast called Natural AF. Like, what does Natural AF mean to you?
Yeah, well, great segue, babe. Well, that's all. When we decided we wanted to, I mean, we had always talked about doing, you know, potentially doing a podcast, but like working together in this capacity. And we've got to thank the Living Free Festival, because it was really off the back of that we were just like, we need to do this now. We were just feeling so inspired and so energized by it. And we, you know, we started to have a really clear vision of like where we wanted to go with it and what we wanted to do with it. And that's what we kind of sat down and were like, what does it mean to be natural AF? Obviously that's a play on words. For anyone that doesn't know, just we might get some older people that maybe don't know because this is all, you know, social media terminology, but AF is just short for as fuck. So like natural as fuck. And that's a play on words because that's what we shorten natural art form to, is NAF. And like, to me, being natural AF, first and foremost, is like being your authentic self. But there are so many layers to that, you know. I think when people first hear that, they might sort of be like, yeah, I'm being authentic. I say how I feel and I do what I want. You know, I say what I think and I'm living authentically, but it's like, really, like, who are you? Like, and that's what I think is, you know, this peeling back of the layers of the onion and, you know, peeling back the layers of conditioning. It's really all getting us back to who we really are. And who we are as spiritual beings, who we are as physical beings in this realm. And, you know, that really encompasses, as we've both learnt a lot over the last few years, is it encompasses so many different aspects, you know, of being. So, you know, the main four that I think will always relate, you know, things back to are, you know, what's also known as the four bodies. So that you've got the physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, and the spiritual body. And they actually, I've kind of just listed them in reverse, but they actually work from the top down. It goes like, spiritual is kind of like, you can heal things spiritually that can heal you mentally, emotionally, and physically. And, you know, then it goes down to the mental level. And I think I mentioned it earlier, your state of mind affects your emotional state, which then affects your physical body. Because I also mentioned before too, is that you know, when we're not expressing our emotions, especially when it comes to trauma, it's unresolved, it's not been processed through the body, it's been trapped, that's when you get chronic illness, nervous system issues. That's one of the things that I can't wait. We're definitely going to have lots of people on to talk about this. Is healing the nervous system and how important that is. I said I used to suffer from anxiety. My nervous system was an absolute wreck for most of my life, especially my adulthood. So I guess like the Natural AF podcast is, we're really going to explore so many different topics that pertain to all these different aspects of who we really are. What does it mean to be natural AF? So we'll cover, again, we've talked about relationships, and I think that's such a big one, because that's how we literally can't survive without human connection. That's naturally how we're meant to be. And, and I guess, a lot of these topics we'll explore, I guess, kind of are bringing us back into alignment, all these different modalities, all these different schools of thought, to bring us more in line with our natural state of being and who we really are, who we naturally are, how we're meant to live, because we have been so conditioned out of that for, generations now, where we're at this point in time. Yeah. So we're going to be covering so many topics, and I'm so excited. But what does it mean for you to be natural AF? What is it to you?
I literally can't say it any better than what you just said. There's health components to it. When I first started Natural Artform and Natural AF, it was off the back of the Music and Sky Festival. And what I experienced out there, post Euronymous walking on me and doing his, meridian stuff and breath work and all this. I was exposed to so many different amazing health, and health modality doesn't even seem to cut it, from and at a personal level, like getting involved and doing the things and experiencing it. I knew instantly that there's this huge unexplored world for me and people like me, that might have more of a blue collar background, vaguely aware of health, being like, just more masculine, and, you just tough it out and you ignore pain and you just do the thing. And why that might be holding you back from your best life, your best health. But I got exposed to things like extended breath work, with Eric Cassano, Euronymous and the stuff I already discussed with him. And definitely go and check out episode 137 on AlphaCast, and then the episode previous to this where Euronymous and I talk about more into the shadow work and some of these things. But we also, there were spiritual topics at Music and Sky. There's so many different things, but the center of it all was just people living their best, most authentic lives, being as healthy as you can be, learning and being empowered truly to solve any problem that comes our way, both personal, and familial, and then even bigger on a societal level. How to go about things like schooling and child rearing, and how to handle death, how to have a relationship with that. So that pushed me into this arena to step in and add my voice to help promote other people's expertise and their depths of knowledge, like Eileen McCusick and tuning forks, and being able to not just correct things physically in the body with a tuning fork, physically on the body, but out in your energy body, out in the biofield, and then even with just your voice, which I have experiences with and stuff. So I love getting in and doing things myself and experiencing it, but I like hearing from the experts and the people, the real experts, the people
Absolutely.
that have their own amazing stories and these unique just genius that they bring to whatever the field is. So that's why I started the podcast. And to me, Natural AF, I'm still discovering it. I know that's the direction I want to go in. I don't know how it's going to turn out when I get there, but I'm here for the journey and for the adventure.
I don't want to spoil it, babe, but I don't think there is a destination. It's just a journey. It's an endless journey, which is like the funny note, right? Like I feel like so many people like in this world, like you know, that most of us have grown up in, and just the way that society is, it's like they have to know everything. Like this is like this whole, you know, dogma around science and like scientism. Like it's its own religion now, and it's because they have to know everything down to the atom. And I'm just like, I like not knowing some things. I think like that's the mystery of life. And I love not knowing what's coming next or where I'm going to end up in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Like, I think that's, I mean, and that, I mean, this also ties into being natural AF. Like, you know, that's, I
nature
think
doesn't end either. It just keeps regenerating and growing and blooming. And
yeah. And I think that's part of, you know, the way that God works. Like, I mean, that's, isn't that in the Bible? God works in mysterious ways. Is that in the Bible? I've never read the Bible, guys.
Sure.
But whatever, it's a saying. And I think that like just being comfortable with that, being comfortable with uncertainty, because it's not all bad. It's, if anything, I think it's like brings so much more excitement and adventure to life. And yeah, like I'm so excited. Like just the interviews we've already got lined up, not even including the ones that we plan on doing in the future. We're just exploring so many different topics, and I think we're going to have some really good conversations. And yeah, exploring all these different things from physical health and like the benefits of growing your food and like good quality water and like all of these things, you know, to the more spiritual aspects of health and, you know, the psyche and, you know, mental, like the mental aspect and, you know, and then the emotions, which, you know, relate again to the body so much. So we can't wait. I can't wait to get these next lot of interviews done and posted.
Yeah,
it's going to be so
absolutely.
good.
Well, I think that's a great place to end this episode. I want to thank everyone for tuning back in and joining us on this journey.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We had so much fun recording it. And if you did enjoy it, we'd absolutely love for you to share this episode, like and follow us wherever you're listening to this or watching this. And you can also follow us on Instagram at Natural AF Podcast, or you can also follow us at Natural Artform if you're in need of some natural remedies.
Go to naturalartform.com where we make simple, pure, powerful products to replace the ones that you already use that have chemicals in them that you don't want on your body. Yeah.
Anyway, we are so excited for the upcoming episodes we've got for you guys. We have a ton of awesome interviews lined up and we can't wait for you to hear them. So stay tuned and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.